Masking mandates, COVID vaccine requirements, and the pushback. All that and more in our weekly Spotlight Politics. Joining us now are Amanda Vinicky and, of course, Paris Schutz. So, team, as we heard earlier, Governor J.B. Pritzker announces masking mandates for schools. Take a look at what he said today.
This is a mandate. This is a mandate across our K-12 schools, our P-12 schools, and childcare to make sure that we're keeping those children, the unvaccinated as well as the vaccinated, safe, and their families, importantly, because this, as you know, this virus can be taken home.
And Amanda, you covered this today, so we know that several suburban school districts were already battling with parents over masking this fall. What are teachers and administrators fearing?
So I think that you have some teachers and administrators fearing an outbreak in their schools, particularly with younger students, those under 12, who don't yet have the approval to get that COVID vaccine. And then, as you noted, the governor saying they could bring it to their family members, perhaps anybody with comorbidities in particular, and or that there could then be some sort of outbreak in a school that would lead to potentially greater learning losses and more tumult, as the goal is to have in-person classes this year. And if there is to be any sort of outbreak, well, then kids would be home. But there's also, of course, I think a lot of heartfelt sentiment. That's why you're seeing these battles play out, as school boards had been left to make these decisions individually, where parents on both sides, some parents don't want to send their children back to school. They're very frightened about this stage. And then others saying, hey, wait a second, I don't want my kid in a mask anymore. I'm over this. And so this is really politically bruising for some of these people that ran for school board. And just briefly, Brandis, by the way, this does come as the Chicago Teachers Union is continuing to openly call for negotiations and more from Lightfoot's appointed CPS board, including they want things like contact tracing in schools and more ventilation, not included, at least openly in their demands, vaccine mandates for CTU teachers.
So, we know that state workers in congregate settings are also being told to get the vaccine, which follows President Biden's federal mandate for federal workers and contractors. Paris, talk a little bit about sort of the political risks and benefits of these mandates.
Well, you have the state's largest public employee union also saying, we want everybody to be safe, but they're not so hot on endorsing vaccine mandates. I think that most of Illinois being vaccinated, or most Illinois adults being vaccinated, that more Illinoisans approve something like a vaccine mandate than disapprove of it, given the rate of COVID. So certainly there is some political risk for Governor Pritzker issuing the mask mandate. It's proven to be incredibly unpopular in certain areas of the state. But if you look at the rate of vaccination and you look at the COVID cases going up, there's probably more political upside for doing it.
And Amanda, advocate Aurora Health Systems, it adds its name to the growing list of American companies that are requiring the staff to vaccinate. Is the balance sort of tipping in that direction?
Well, so those corporations, of course, don't have to face the same political battles that Pritzker, as he is trying for a second term, and other politicians have to be worried about. Another one, by the way, so also I think Walgreens, I mean, this is different, but reinstituting masks in their stores, another big Chicago area-based company. I do think the fulcrum is tipping somewhat, but we could see it even more so if the FDA, as is expected, takes action to move these vaccines into full approval. That is something that is cited by skeptics as one reason that this doesn't have full FDA clearance. And so we are expecting that federal agency to act, within a month on that.
In Paris last night, we covered how New York City will start requiring proof of the vaccination at restaurants, bars, gyms, and performance venues. Do we think Chicago could follow suit?
Well, at this point, the state's top doctor, Dr. Allison Arwady, the head of the Department of Public Health, is saying no. I mean, that's not the route that they want to go. And you see more and more private businesses and establishments instituting their own vaccine mandates, saying if you want to come in here and be a customer, you just have to show us proof of vaccination. So at this point, the mayor, Dr. Arwady, want to continue on that route, leaving that up to private businesses. But the CDC today just came out with projections of where the infection rate could go in the next couple weeks. And if it continues to go up, if it continues to skyrocket, I wouldn't be surprised if the mayor revisited that.
Right, which that skyrocketing is obviously a scary thought. Amanda, we know that Mayor Lightfoot says that LALApalooza won't be a super spreader event, but we know downstate health officials are advising festival goers to get tested. What do we know? What's going on?
Well, some of the fears that certain medical experts have had is that this is an event where you had a whole lot of people packed together, commingling from all different areas of the state and then going back with it to their respective homes, and that this could be a way to really spread it, and particularly young people who may be more asymptomatic and then spreading it without even knowing it. So really, I think just a precaution, not just downstate. I know of at least one Chicago restaurant that is requiring any staff who attended the LALApalooza festival to get vaccinated for the COVID vaccine. So this is, of course, one of those things where you have a lot of mixed science in that it is outdoors, transmission nowhere near as high, but again, people really close together and singing, shouting, spitting, potentially spreading.
Well, getting the vaccine after the fact isn't going to help you if you got infected at LALApalooza, unless I'm getting the science wrong here.
No,
Yeah,
I think
testing.
testing. I think Amanda meant to say
Yeah.
testing. I heard vaccine too. I think she meant testing.
Sorry about that.
No problem. It's been a long pandemic, everybody.
Yeah.
So we know that former lawmaker and moderate Republican Kirk Dillard is flirting with the idea of running for governor against J.B. Pritzker. Paris, give us the latest, and should Governor Pritzker be worried?
Well, I think this is a sign that a lot of folks in the Illinois Republican Party aren't thrilled with the candidates that they have right now, and the ones they have might appeal to a more conservative, more downstate or rural block of voters. And they, in Illinois, the tradition has been that Republican can win statewide. There have been many Republican governors in the last 20, 30 years, Republican statewide officials. But the template is usually being pro-business, being more moderate on social issues. And so Kirk Dillard is saying he's fielding calls, saying there are a lot of people that think he might be that guy. The key is are there big funders that think he's that guy? Someone like Ken Griffin, the richest person in the state. If Ken Griffin gets involved, he went up toe-to-toe against Pritzker in that progressive income tax amendment. Ken Griffin might be able to fund a candidate like J.B. Pritzker can fund himself, and that would present a formidable challenge for Governor Pritzker. But at this point, Dillard is not committing. He's just saying he's fielding calls. And remember, Dillard was a former state senator Republican. He cut an ad for Barack Obama when he was running for Senate, saying, he worked across the aisle. He's been the head of the Regional Transportation Authority. He's had to work with Democrats. He's had to work with Republicans. So he's seen as a kind of guy that is moderate, that can work across the aisle.
So, Amanda, one Republican who is already in the race has already responded to this. Is Darren Bailey, is he concerned that a higher profile moderate might be getting in the race?
No, I don't think Darren Bailey is. He's definitely staked out a very different sort of campaign platform than Dillard would. Interesting. There is a lot of focus on State Senator Darren Bailey, and that's because he really made a name for himself suing against Governor J.B. Pritzker's COVID mandates. You do, of course, have two other Republican candidates that are similarly along that vein. Paul Schimpf, kind of taking out a less of a drastic point of view there, but Gary Rabine, a businessman who has some money, nowhere near Rauner or Griffin money, but maybe enough money to make this a race thus far, hasn't really done so, who likewise is, has not received, from what we know, the COVID vaccine, and more of a skeptic of any of that science. So I think that really, sort of as Paris said, I think politicians get lots of calls from folks all the time saying, hey, run, run, run. You need the call from somebody with big money again. He's sort of looking for that Griffin blessing. And then perhaps Pritzker would have more worries about a race from a centrist Republican.
So talking about a former governor, the most famous former governor of Illinois, Rod Blagojevich, back in the news, suing over the ban on his running for office after he was impeached and removed for office. Amanda, he was, we know, pardoned by President Trump after serving 8 years for corruption. Remind us why he can't run.
So actually, not a full pardon. He was commuted.
Commuted,
And
exactly.
So
Excuse
not
me.
quite the same there, right? I mean, and so he doesn't have the. But really, no matter what happened on the federal level, separately, when the Illinois Senate voted to remove Blagojevich from office, also passed a measure that explicitly said, no more Rod Blagojevich running for what they could control, and that is offices in Illinois, be it state office, statewide office, or local office. And so he is now alleging that that is unfair and that the impeachment and removal proceedings against him were wrong. I will add, and this is something that his legal paperwork did not bring up, but there's also an Illinois law that talks about, that has been challenged and held up previously, that says those that are convicted of quote unquote infamous crimes cannot run again for office in Illinois. Kind of difficult to figure out what fits under that infamous crimes category when you look at state statute, and I did go into it and try to read it, but I think that a lot of people would argue that what Blagojevich was, by the way, convicted of, regardless of that commutation, would count as infamous.
I think most folks would agree with that, Amanda. So, Paris, if he should win in court, what are the chances he runs again?
I don't think he's going to win in court, Brandis. Every legal expert we saw say this was not a legal event. This was a political event. When he was impeached, he did get due process. He chose not to participate. I think Megan Dwyer, the reporter from Channel 9, also asked the governor, so why didn't you e-file? Why did you come down to this place you hate so much to file? And Amanda brought up the fact that there were a bunch of cameras from ABC and a camera crew member saying they're going to do a documentary on him. So I'm sorry, let's call this what it is, a publicity stunt. And the governor said he was, the former governor, saying he was a great governor for the people. Well, let's not forget that his approval rating by the time he was impeached was about 12%. And that was famously caught on wiretap phone conversation where he's complaining about that, saying, I gave your grandma free rides on the train and I gave your kids free health care, and that's all that you got from me, Illinois. So, we'll see what this documentary is all about.
Yeah, we're tuning in for that. Amanda, we've got about 60 seconds. Lawmakers, environmentalists, and ComEd's parent company are at an impasse over the shutdown of 2 Illinois nuclear plants. Is this a play for more money to keep them open?
I mean, it is, but also there are nuclear plants across the country that are in this position. You just have a changed market for energy that is making it so that, yes, even a report that Pritzker commissioned, it found that, yes, these plants are at risk of, in a very short order, losing money. But what is it, a handout? I think that there's certainly those who are skeptical, especially given what ComEd has been charged with at the federal level in terms of this bribery scandal. And what is really interesting to me, by the way, is that Governor J.B. Pritzker asked today, he said, you know what, I offered a compromise in the spring, a compromise, by the way, that legislators didn't get behind, apparently does not have the votes to pass, but he's sort of saying, take it or leave it. And this is the second area where he's at loggerheads with unions.
All right, more to watch for you, Amanda. Thanks. That's Spotlight. Amanda Vinicky, and of course, Paris Schutz. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.